Motivation. I'm Lori Joy Kingwell.
And I'm Chrissy Van. We're two dreamers on two wheels inspired by our community.
And celebrating the voices we're just lucky enough to discover along the ride. So if not already, like, subscribe, follow along, do what you gotta do to not miss an episode.
Riding a motorcycle, so it's all about choices. You got lane position, routes you take, turn left, turn right, you gear up, you gear down, fast, slow. Each moment has you scan the road in front of you. There's choices to be made. So each choice impacting and changing the direction you go and how fast and slow you get there. So on this episode today, we're talking all about choices and change. It's a wild concept when you really get down to it, and change is happening in every moment of every day. One breath to the next, a new lived experience never to be repeated, all a result of the choices we make, both big and small. So today we are addressing two simple questions: why and when? Why should we be actively pursuing change within our lives? And when is the universe telling us that it's time to make a change? And as in every episode, we want to provide you with some know-how within motivation maintenance and some tools to take you along for the ride of your life. This is your motivation.
All right, Lori.
Kick us off, girl.
First of all, I want to say how excited I am for those that have followed our journey. We are back. We took a very well-needed rest to rejuvenate. It's something that we preach here. And Lori and I were going and then thought we're going to take a little ridecation. And now we have returned. So we're so excited to have you back. And especially for this topic, I want to kick things off with a little quote that I found here. If I want to change my life, I have to change my life. When you put it that way, it addresses the fact that change is absolutely terrifying most of the time. Now, when we talk about change, I want to address the pandemic because March 2020 hit. And since then, now, depending on when you're listening at this time of recording, we're about a year and a half in. I know so many people that have made massive life changes. And you probably do too, because statistically, people have now opted either from a displacement that happened as a result of this massive world event, or literally sheer boredom due to the monotony that has been involved in our lives due to the circumstances of isolation and restrictions, et cetera, et cetera. But because of that, people decided to take on massive life changes. We're talking people that have gone from city living to the suburbs, have gone through career changes, have gotten into relationships, broken off relationships. You name it, a big life event, people have jumped onto those. Now, change, I think, is a really good thing in life, but a lot of these people are finding they've made these massive leaps and are left with, they're not content. They have this inner turmoil over the fact that they've uprooted themselves in such a way. And why is that, Lori? Well, one of the biggest topics of this episode is that they didn't connect to a why when it comes to the changes that they were making. And having a why is imperative.
Yeah, no, the why is the key. And I think we talked about this. Well, I know we have referenced this in other episodes prior for sure. But when we talked about, I think it was the very first episode that we ever, put out there of the motivation. It's like we have motivation every second of our day, but it's a matter of like, what is motivating you? And are you connected to what's motivating you? Because we use the alarm clock as the example of if the alarm clock goes off, I'm motivated to press snooze if I want more sleep, or I'm motivated to get up and go meditate or whatever, because I know that that's going to be the best for setting myself up for the day. And the only difference of the choice you make is your why. And if your why is clear, then when you're in the hard shit and when you're in the, the fog of it all, and it's not so fun anymore and the excitement's worn off or something comes that you didn't see coming, if you don't have that why, then yeah, everything inside of you is like, well, why the hell am I doing this for? Why would I put myself through this if there's no reason big enough that trumps this shitty feeling I have right now or this uncomfortable feeling? And change is happening the same way we talk about motivation. Change is happening, whether we like it or not. It's inevitable in every aspect of our lives. Now, are we participating in it? And if we are actually participating in it, you have to have the why in order to participate in a way that feels worthwhile or makes those little itty bitty choices worth the bigger picture.
Well, and I think when you talk about participating it, that goes directly to people probably thinking, well, how the heck do I participate in instigating the change? We always look so far ahead that we don't realize that change that we want to invoke, because I do want to emphasize there are changes that are going to happen, as you say, that are brought into your life out of a complete circumstance outside of yourself. That's going to happen. But what we're addressing are those changes that you want to make, that you feel once you address your why to the ping of your soul. Those changes don't happen overnight. There is such an important step of understanding that if we want to move forward in that direction, it really comes down to the daily choices, the daily habits, the daily decision makings that we make. Just like when we started the podcast, when you're on the motorcycle, your entire ride experience is dictated by the choices that you make moment by moment. Think of any time that you've ridden in tandem with your group. If all of a sudden you're kicking your leg out to the left, the entire line moves in behind you in formation. This is exactly the same experience in your life when you start making daily choices and minuscule habits that go toward propelling you where you want to influence your life. And it's also understanding bigger than that, the small choices that you make, that you can make the choice to change. How many times do you encounter people in your life, or maybe it's something that you're saying to yourself, I don't want my life to look like this. Oh, I'm stuck at this job I hate. Oh, I'm stuck in this place I don't like. Well, you have the right and the ability to make the decision, even today, to start making choices and steps to change your future outcome. And a lot of times when it comes to these choices, we start to think, well, I started making choices that propelled me forward today and this week and a month from now, and I'm not seeing where I want to be yet. It's also about that future planning with your goal, understanding that it's going to take time. It's going to take time, and that is okay. When you look at any of the great thinkers of the world or the people that really made impactful change, you don't look at what they accomplished in a month. Sometimes you think, oh, they changed their life from start to finish in a year, or look at where they are in a decade. These motivational tales that we get inspired from are often not the result of somebody who's like, well, I went out on Tuesday and by next Tuesday, woo, the world was really, really different for me. It just doesn't happen that way. As much as maybe we would love to fast forward, you got to go through the highs, the lows, and the shit to get there. I mean, Lori, for you and I think this podcast is a fabulous example. We both wanted to tackle a creative project. We've seen this little momentum build. Then we took a pause, that pause being our choice. Are we going to see the same level of growth in that time that we're hitting the brakes? Absolutely not. I bet you as we start hitting the gas pedal again, the momentum starts to build again. So there's evidence in even the smallest pockets of our life.
And going into it, knowing that when you're going to make these little micro choices that essentially, they make up what your day looks like, therefore your week looks like, therefore your month looks like, therefore your year looks like, therefore your life looks like, kind of thing. It's also recognizing that you're not going to get every little one dialed in right away. It's an impossibility because you're also working, your future self is up in competition with your current self. And your current self has these really set in habitual behaviors, habitual thinking, all these, and that's how our body and brains are programmed, right? This is how we save time and all these things. Now, if you're programmed in a way you want to be programmed, this is gorgeous. And this is where, we're talking about actively kind of programming yourself through these choices and being a part of the participant in your change so that down the road, you're just like, oh yeah, this is the programming I want to be, how I respond to others around me, how I view the world, how I, because everyone can be really nice when things are going well, but it's like, you really see someone's character and And that's all part of like, changing to be the best version of ourselves. It's ideally what we're all looking towards. But here's the other thing is that for a very long time, we've all been programmed in a way that doesn't really actually meet our individual needs. It's just where we're at as human beings in life still. And so you have to understand that you've got to actually take the time, and that it absolutely, you're rewiring neurons in your brain. The cool thing is that that's the beauty and magic of it, but that it takes actual like real work. But here's the other thing, as uncomfortable as it is, it can be really fun if you constantly stay curious within it. And it can be, if we can step into almost as much as possible. I have to practice this a lot for myself. I'm still pretty terrible at it, to be honest. But the release of, as soon as I should know better, and I did it again. I showed up in that way, and blah, 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 and I'm just like, chill the fuck out, release it. Yeah, you did, but like, like we all know now the research behind how shame doesn't help you progress as a human. How telling yourself how shitty you are doesn't make you a better person the next time. It's about acknowledging and taking accountability for where you're at and getting real with where you're at. Going into that like you're going to be uncomfortable, that's part of it. If going in already that like you need to be real clear on your why, like write that shit down, get as descriptive as possible, and not like, I want to just have money, and I want to be successful, and I want to be sexy, and I want to be, but like real things. Like I want to have courage. I want to feel like deep love for myself. I want to feel connected, like actual shit that matters. And then you're like, okay, well, what connects you? When do you feel most connected? Is it watching a sunset? Is it having a bath? Is it when you're hugging people that you love? It's that like getting clear, and then getting more clear, and then doing more of that. Again, I know we've referenced this in episodes, but like the change, you already got a lot of shit that you can work with the momentum of it all to help you along and to get you really started in the areas that you are just starting at the baseline, like your baseline. And like, remember that, you're at a baseline, and like, it's okay to be super shitty at this. if anything, it's like,
sure.
Super shitty at it. And it actually gets easier because like, you're just like, yeah, I'm super shitty at this. Yeah, I'm crap. And then when you're just kind of like terribly bad at it, you're like, yeah, I'm just bad. I'm only bad.
Mediocre.
Yeah, mediocre
for the
win. So good.
I mean, to be honest, taking it back to riding, 100%, when you think of learning how to ride a motorcycle, you go through all those stages. Well, at least I did. I know some people just hop on and they're like, ride into the wind. I don't learn like that. When I wanted to make a change, I was really bad. Stall. And then when you're mediocre around a corner, you're like, woo. And then when you're finally soaring, it's the best feeling. But one of the things that I love that you addressed, and the word that you used to address it at the beginning of your statement there, was about curiosity, and how important that insatiable curiosity is, because it comes down to, when it comes to invoking change in our life, that curiosity will help fuel you to enjoy and fall in love with the process of change. That's really what you're looking for. A lot of times, again, we end up so focused on an end goal where really life is happening now. So what you want to do is really sink in and enjoy the process. Now, that's a lot easier to do when you're connected to the why, as you discussed. But one thing that we haven't talked about yet is, when do we know that it's time to make a change? When is that moment that we want to start adding it to our life? And to be honest, I think most of us, even if you're listening, know the answer, even if you don't want to admit it, because the universe has a funny little way of telling us when we want to pursue something different, or more importantly, when something's not serving us, yet we continue to invite it in our life over and over again. Why do we do that? Because it's so damn comfortable. Often the terrifying notion of taking steps to move out of that seems so much bigger than just, I can quote you, Lori, in other podcasts where you said, well, I know this discomfort, so that's scary to me. But that's not something that you want to keep subjecting yourself to. Going back to talking about the pandemic and how it made all these monumental shifts in many people's lives, let's take that down a notch and instead use this whole experience as a lesson that if there are certain things that aren't serving you, to start mapping out what choices you want to make and what processes you want to invite in your life that you're going to be lifted by when you start pursuing them. It's having, as you say, those micro habits that we start to make in our life that are going to make our days more joyful. Is every day going to be the picture postcard perfect one? Of course not. That's not life, but that's okay. If you're taking tiny little steps, it's like the rungs on the ladder. Eventually, you're going to look up and you're at the top of the mountain.
Yeah. When you lean in closer to that discomfort, when the bigger things in life happen, or that there's a real life change to be made, or you're doing something that is scary, you've practiced this discomfort to be comfortable. You've had a little bit and you've practiced it in the ways that you're not necessarily, being pushed off the cliff. I always use the thing when life's speaking to you, if you don't listen, I'm like, here's the thing. Life is either you're going off the cliff one way or the other. So you're either jumping or you're getting pushed by life. But at least if you jump, you have a little bit more say in how you land. And I was like,
100%.
And that's how because it's one of those things where it will get more and more uncomfortable where you're at, because again, change is inevitable. Your cells change, your entire cell, and every cell in your body changes every 7 years, I think it is, which is just like mind blowing when you think about it. Everything changes. Nothing stays the same thing. Everything changes, right? But it's that kind of thing of like, if you can become more comfortable in the discomfort of it and also participate and collaborate, that's like the happy medium. Because you're either trying to control it away, or you're just willy-nilly just like flying this way and that. And you're just like, maybe this will bring me happiness, I'll just grab onto this big change and I'll just do this big change. And then you're just running from life. So you're either gripping it with like white-handed claws, or you're just running at Mach speed from it and changing every 2 seconds because maybe that will bring you happiness. And it's this happy medium of like, what choices can you make in your day that collaborate? How can you become more in tune with yourself? How can you listen, work with your strengths, work with your love, become more connected to you, therefore express yourself in this world? And there is this like little happy medium. And that's essentially, as I'm saying it out loud, collaboration and curiosity.
For sure. And becoming a partner with the process. And I think every single time that you take those steps to embrace the discomfort, you're proving to yourself what we already know about you, but humans are so resilient. Look at mass change that happens in a unasked for way. Again, I hate to bring it up, but the biggest one we're experiencing is the pandemic. How quickly we adapted to each phase of this life experience. When you look at a natural disaster, how quickly do communities come together and rebuild? We have example after example throughout history of these large scale, unasked for situations that result in change where humans prevail. We are incredible beings that have this ability. So imagine you have this superpower of this resilience to move through any element of discomfort and fear that comes your way. You are built in with this feature and equipped with it. Now imagine,
You really are.
if you didn't, right? If you didn't wait for life to come and hit you with an activation switch, guess what? You have the switch to turn it on. So imagine if you elevate that and then you power that up to use that for something that you really desire for your life, to live a more connected life, to live a life of more compassion, more love, all those things that we know that make it full and this incredible experience day over day. We have that ability. And I think it's knowing that through this discomfort and fear, I already have the tools that are necessary. And every single time, as you say, Lori, it could be the tiniest challenge you set for yourself. You're proving to yourself, I have this ability to embrace this side of myself. And 9 times out of 10, you're coming through the other side thinking, oh, that actually wasn't as scary as I thought. It's
Yeah.
always our
Oh
brains can
God,
be a
yeah.
place that creates so much bigger fear than is warranted. And unfortunately, that's also a feature we have.
Yeah. That one's built in to keep us alive. That's the one that
Yeah,
was like,
true.
it was, and that's great. Like that is great when you actually need to stay alive and survive. But we haven't yet evolved in our consciousness enough for the upper brain to be built just as quickly of your higher functioning faculties of like problem solving, critical thinking, empathy, creativity, like it all, but you have to be, again, quite literally, you have to be an active participant on how well that is built. And again, we are still evolving in each generation in how well we guide children into building that upper brain. Like we're walking around with a lot of like splinters, walls, and like jaggedy nails, and and we're like pulling out the crap nails and we're pounding in some new ones. It's like, we're re-shingling. like, and that's why I say like you're up.
Slightly leaky roof.
That's why I was like, you got to be honest. You can't just like, paint over the leaky roof, or you know what I mean? Or just keep spackling. Like maybe there's some mold there, clean out the mold and then get going with it. But when you're doing the renovations, right? But that's what you really need to think about it is. I always say around early childhood, I always say, look, they're getting building a home from scratch. We're getting a remodel. But I'm like, you got to understand that the remodel comes with a lot more frustrations than just like a brand new build. Do you know what
I love that. I love that. That's so perfect.
Yeah. And so that's why I say too, you got to get real with yourself and you got to look at some really hard stuff. And as excruciating as it is, and I'll be honest, like the times where I've really gone to some pretty, deep places within myself and looked at some stuff like, it took my breath away at times, just seeing with clarity as much as I could of like how I really show up at times. But until I do those things, I can't really change where I need to change. And my why isn't really there. I'm just doing it because I want to be a good person, where you're just like, no, I want to be like a quality human to my core, And when I was trying to always be a good person, that again always had more selfish reasons than I was willing to admit to myself, because that was so that I got the pat on the back, or that was because then I could, then I was one of the good ones, or whatever that looked like, versus this isn't about being like into the good people club. And it's not like my whole life, I always cared very deeply about other humans, to the point where like sometimes I had to be like, rein it in. You're not like, you know what I mean? Like you're suffering over certain things you can't control. But I learned, we spoke to this even for yourself, you learned very young to be a people pleaser and like happy-go-lucky and be as positive, even if you didn't feel it, that was kind of like your job. And then because I was natural towards the like being a person that could help people, then that became an identity versus a why. Like it's not my identity, it's not that's who I am, but it's like it's a part of my soul. And so it has to be my why has to be like, why do you want to do that? So you're a good person, or because you want to actually be a part of change in the like deep, deep future of this world, of humanity? Yeah. So you got to get real with yourself before you can really understand of what changes you want to make and where you want to lead. Doesn't mean you need to get nitty gritty right off the bat, deep dive, but at some point, if you really want to, step into your life, I'm a firm believer you do. At some point you do. Just no way around.
Oh, it's unavoidable. And then honestly, not just one time in your life either.
Ooh.
I think that because we are always changing, whether you intended to or didn't, you're not always the same person in the same space, in the same mind frame. It's always fluid. So it's knowing when to check yourself and revisit that. And normally you can feel when you're out of balance or not being honest with yourself. We know when we come across those time periods in our lives, and it's stepping back and deciding, my brain, I'm not going to allow myself to deny this anymore. I'm going to crack it open and start doing the work. And that could be as simple as communicating with like-minded friends, people that you can be honest with. You can go the therapy route, whether it's certain things that you're reading. Those steps can look so many different ways, but I think it's important to have frequent check-ins with ourselves, because life is constantly evolving around us and we're constantly evolving. So we can't expect a conversation or an awakening you had 10 years ago to still be the thing that fuels you in the right direction that you're planning to go.
Perfectly said. Because it's an absolute life. Like this work is your life. That's why they call it life's work. It's your life's work. And it is
I'm
opinion that gets
exhausted.
filled. Yeah. Cause it's just like, even just that, it's like, well, I've conquered being a good human. And you're like, no, I promise you, it's not about, again, where it's like, it's not about that. It's just about like constantly expanding and elevating, and you are going to have so many different versions of yourself by the end of this life. And it's one of those things you're going to go at it at a different pace. You might, go all in for, like, I went at it for a solid year where I was like, I was so insanely devoted to it. And then it was time to kind of like step out of it. And then now live as the person I had now become. Cause I was kind of like a Bambi on my new legs. Cause I was just like, oh, I haven't looked at the world through these eyes before. And then I had to go out and live it. And I was just like, oh, fell there, tripped there, whoop, just took out someone else's knees. And like, and I'm still making my way. And then once I've got my feet underneath me, I'll go in again for another, year and deep dive. And I didn't even realize I've been doing that since I was about 16 years old. But now as I'm doing it actively without going through depression or going through these things that have like, again, pushed me off the cliff, I now jump off with my legs and then I land differently because it doesn't feel like something that's happening to me. I'm like, oh no, this is for me. This will change my life and for the better. It will be painful, but it will be absolutely better at the end. It always has been. And I'll go deep dive again and then I'll come out wobbly and I'll fuck up a lot, but I'll also elevate myself and be a better, just all around quality of life will continually improve. And hopefully the ones around me will, also improve because someone close to them is just bettering themselves.
Oh, it's contagious. And that is really the wish, that constant state of evolution, the constant curiosity, the constant change for something that serves outside of ourselves as well. Because I think most of the time when you identify with a true why, it does have a bigger purpose than just intrinsically ourselves. And the way that I look at it when it comes to that constant state of evolution, to go back to the motorcycle ride example as to why you would even want to seek change instead of that monotony, and instead of just staying with what's comfortable, imagine you're on your motorcycle and you do the exact same ride in the exact same way every single time. There is an entire world of routes out there. There are incredible roads to explore, other motorcyclists to meet, other cafes to experience. Literally, the juice of life is in experiencing all those different rides. And some rides might suck and you may end up in a hailstorm and you get a flat tire and all of that comes with it. But it is the beauty of life. And that is why we have full circled 3 times to this conversation about change, so that we could do it right and do it in a way of justice. Because I think for you and I, it is something that we're so passionate about and something that we constantly check ourselves to explore and figure out ourselves and reconnect with what fuels our purpose, what fuels our why. And we hope that you find that inside yourselves.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, this sounds like a little bit of a motivation.
Maintenance. I mean, the singing career, that's what I'm going to take strides for. Actually, Lori has an incredible voice. I'm just going to put that out there.
That's a little tidbit for y'all.
Oh man, I'm staying for more. Lori, what is your motivation maintenance?
My motivation maintenance is that work your way backwards. So picture yourself a year from now. How do you want to feel waking up? How do you want to feel about the world around you? How do you want to feel just internally when you're walking through the day? Just picture it. Like, how would you walk? What would your posture be like? What would you feel like inside? How would you act around family and friends? What kind of job would you have? All those different things. And then work backwards. And when I say work backwards, it's like, okay, well, what brings you that feeling already in life? Okay, well, write that stuff down. Okay, so those are like strengths, or where is it that you, where you're optimal? And then how can you plug those things in? But get a plan. And then what would I need to do in a day to be that person a year from now, and just start with even just one thing. Now, I probably mentioned it already, but Atomic Habits book is a phenomenal one to get really clear on how to begin, just quite literally how to begin. Like, it just breaks it down. And so even if you just start on the one and build, but envision who you want to be and work backwards, and immediately know that like you're going to be nowhere near that human for a good chunk of time, but that's part of it. And it would be ridiculous to think that you would step in, because if everyone just like stepped into that person, no problemo, well, we'd have a bunch of people just walking around as just like the flyest folks you've ever seen at every given turn. And we're clearly don't have that. If you look at the world, there's a lot of insane people, but like, let's just be real clear on that. Like, everyone needs to do this everywhere on earth, but that like, you got to remember that you're in a remodel. You got some walls to tear down, you got some floorboards to rip up, and you got some repair work to do before you can zoom. But like, start small. You're not going to tackle the wall, the roof, and the floor all at one now, are you? Pick one.
That would be crazy.
And once the walls get a little bit more intact than you, or whatever, I don't know construction, so I don't know what you start with. But
I was hoping for a Lori metaphor.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. But like, yeah. And you know what? Here's where you start. You start of like, what would feel the most different? Like, what area, whether it's like, I hate my job. Okay, well, if I could just view having appreciation for the fact that I'm employed, if I could just focus on being employed and just focus on that feeling, the gratitude around being employed, gratitude around being employed. Every time someone at work pisses you off, or you're walking in that door, wherever you work, I'm just so grateful to be employed right now. And you just start small in where you would feel the biggest difference in your life. So like, that's where you could start. Or if it's your, healthy eating, whatever it looks like, but just start where something that you would make the biggest change of feeling.
I love that. I'm going to start doing that. So mine, it's funny. I thought you were going to out my motivation maintenance in the middle of the episode, but it is to practice small scale discomforts. Just practice them. And I'm talking really, really small scale, such as, how many times do you go for your walk, or you're heading to the gym and you listen to the same playlist, or you're listening to your top 6 daily mixes on Spotify or wherever you listen to your music? I'm super guilty of that a lot of the time. Well, maybe today is the day you hit the good old explore button and listen to something different. That is a small scale discomfort. And you might think in your head, okay, it's not uncomfortable to listen to different music. It actually, think of how habitual you are over your playlist. Probably very. I would say the vast majority are going to say very. So that's a strong example. Second challenge, small scale discomfort. I know we're all getting that food delivery. Trust me, those credit card bills every time. I'm like, it got me again. So maybe today is the day you don't go to your regular go-to that or if you're convinced that you only want to have it from that one little place, you don't order the same meal. Because what happens every time you log into those websites, they remember. They're like, hey, do you want us to order you your blah, blah, blah again? And you hit, oh, okay, it knew me. How great. Practice a small scale discomfort and venture outside the box and order something new. And yes, I realize this probably sounds, how the hell would that impact my life on a grander scale? All you are doing is practicing discomfort in a small, palatable way. And then you can start moving your way through bigger ones. But the more you practice those tiny moments of stepping out of your routine and making a choice to do something slightly out of your wheelhouse, it gets easier. It's the literal minuscule baby step you can start taking for yourself today that can make a foundation of habits that will serve you in the long run.
Why that's so awesome what Chrissy's suggesting. And like she said, it's so small and minuscule that it seems like, well, how's that going to, the other thing about it is it brings an awareness, because when you feel the ping of like, well, what do? I don't know why would I, and that uncomfortable feeling, you will notice how much the smallest of thing can create that feeling. And so you'll notice that like how much it's part of it. And it's not actually like the universe being like, don't you dare order that other kind of food. Like it's not the universe speaking to you. And that's why you're uncomfortable. Because so many people be like, I just had a feeling it wasn't for me because I didn't feel good about it. And you're like, no, that's habitual behavior. It's a very different thing. But that's a great way to start to notice and get better at that. So I think that's fantastic to see.
I'm gonna feel terrible if somebody deviates from their food order and gets like terrible food poisoning and it's like, I was shitting myself.
As our girlfriend Jody would say, it's all part of it. It's all part of it. All part of it.
Although I truly wish that is not your misfortune.
For sure.
So if you do recall, I know it's been a while since we've dropped a fresh episode, but everyone, we do finish with a quote to help fuel your day. And Lori, I would love to know, what's your quote?
Right. Well, technically the quote is a journal entry that I
love that.
I swear to God, I was like, oh, I think I have something here. And I like literally lifted this sheet of paper out of my work folder thing. And I was like, oh, this was meant to be, clearly, because it's exactly what we're talking about. So this was April 2019. I wrote, it's the small nudges, the whispers of a feeling that are your true aha moments, as you rarely get the whack on the head you're hoping for to tell you what's next. It's grit and tenacity to keep moving forward, to do what needs to be done to progress in this life. Progress equals happiness. You will be scared, you will be unsure, you will be overwhelmed, but most importantly, you will always be okay and better for it. Every day you have the choice to step into the life you know you are capable of. Choose courage over comfort. Surround yourself with those who inspire, who support, and stay curious in this life. It takes a village, so find your tribe. Live purposefully, intentionally, and with grace. Honor who you are at your core, and all will be well. No matter what, you're going to make it out on the other side.
I have so much regret over asking you first. So much. That was beautiful. Fuck. All right, here goes, guys. My quote. Garbage quote. Good old Billy Cox. No offense. He's a member of Jimi Hendrix band. What up? Here we go. Oh, it just seems so lackluster now. No offense, Billy. Life will only change when you become more committed to your dreams than you are to your comfort zone. And that, my friends, is your motivation.
You've just listened to the Motivation Podcast with your host, Chrissy Van, and me, Lori Joy Kingwell.
Thanks for joining us along the ride. We've got new episodes dropping every Monday, and we're all about community. So follow us on Instagram at Motivation Podcast and visit our website at themotivation.com.
And in the meantime, tanks full and full throttle.